Hi, welcome to Ask Ralph and Lonnie. I'm Ralph Demetrius, or Dr. Ralph Demetrius, I guess. This is one of our segments which is called Good Health for Our Children. This is a series that we're doing about things that we think our children should know if they want to be healthy as they go through their lives. It seems to be becoming increasingly hard. There was just recently a study that came out where they listed the happiest countries on the planet, and the United States had fallen, I think, to number 23. It had been in the top, in the teens. Now it was down into the 20s. And what was really shocking about it, that if they had just taken people 60 years and older, the United States would have been up about like 10, someplace around there, I think. I'm not exact. But if they just picked from like 30 years and younger, it would be number 63. That we're having a real, almost epidemic of young people being unhappy. And of course, we're dealing with these epidemics of fentanyl and these other powerful drugs that we're losing hundreds of thousands of people to these overdoses now. And then we also have a tremendous amount of depression among young children, among young adults, among teenagers. It's really kind of epidemic. And you think, well, what's doing? Is this social media? Is it the video games? Is it the diet? And to a certain extent, it's all of it. Everything's always kind of complicated that way. But there's a couple of things that I've really noticed because, we work in an interesting way. We're naturopathic physicians. We're professional herbalists for over 50 years. We're ergonomic designers and feng shui practitioners. We're kinesiologists. We work with how the body reacts to different environments. We're also astrologers. You may watch our show, Planetary Calendar. And if you go back to like Aristotle, for instance, Aristotle was an astrologer. He was called a philosopher, but he was an astrologer who was trained as a physician. All the physicians at that time were trained as astrologers. That was their MRI of the day. They would look at the chart and get a sense of what the person's nature was like. And so they would understand who they were, and then they could look at what the planets were doing now and how it was affecting them. And it's still used this way. Medical astrology is actually a very big thing, and it was taught in many medical schools up until the 1920s. So what are the things that are affecting people? One thing I've really noticed is posture. Now, when you're growing up, your mother probably always said to you, as she said to me, stand up straight, don't stoop, And sometimes my wife says that to me. Lonnie says that to me. If it's the end of the day, I'm tired, I'm walking along and I'm like, my shoulders are down. Posture says a great deal about your inner attitude. And in fact, when young soldiers come into the military, one of the things first things they do is they make them stand very straight with their chins up and their shoulders back. And they look up like this. It's very straight. Why? Well, besides making them look good in their uniforms, a lot of it's about confidence. You're actually making the spine go very straight, so everything flows up and down the spine, up those electrical cords, those nervous cords, very smoothly. Also, the body is programmed that when the body is up and straight, you feel confident. 2, when you're standing up like that, you're looking out into the distance. And when your eyes are up and looking out, what happens? Well, you're seeing the world. You're not looking at your feet. You're seeing the world. You're not looking at your shoes. You're seeing out there. You're seeing the possibilities. It's a sign of optimism. If you ever watch great professional speakers, they stand very straight, so they feel optimistic. And it's actually a technique we use when people are having challenges with confidence. We'll design the room so that when they walk in the room, the first thing they'll do is their eyes go across the room and up a little bit. We'll put something on the far wall to bring their eyes up and a little to the right. Why to the right? Because the body's designed in such a way that to the left is the emotional organs. This is where the stomach is. The spleen is over on this side. These are the sensitive organs. On the right side is the liver, the gallbladder. They're tough organs. So this is your more defensive side. So this is why you put your right hand out when you meet someone, because this is your shield side. This is your stronger side. Typically the right side of the body is a little more muscular, tougher than the left side. So you put your vulnerable, you keep your vulnerable side back. If you ever walk with children and there's a danger, you'll notice that you move them with your left hand behind you, because your right side is your protective side. Okay? So people should stand up and make them feel happier. What do you see all the time? You go into any cafe, people are waiting to get their coffee. What do you see? Everyone's sitting like this. They're sitting with their head down. They're looking down at their phones. What's this doing to the spine? What's this doing to their nervous system? They're looking down like this. It's so rare that I see teenagers standing straight and looking out, or even talking to each other. They'll be sitting next to each other, the two people sitting both side by side, both with their heads tilted down, not even like looking straight, tilted down. This is part of the issue. The body responds to how we stand. The body, our emotional body, reacts to our body language. This is something that's taught in acting. What's your body language? What is your body saying? It's taught in professional speaking. What's your body saying? It's taught in sales. If you see pictures of holy men, you see pictures of Jesus, he'll have one hand over his heart and one hand out with the palm out. When you greet somebody, you want to make sure they're welcome. You put your palms out so they see your hands are open, but it's also a welcoming gesture. When people are standing up, it's an open expression of confidence. But when you're down like this, it's actually a feeling of fear. Now, if it's off to the left, it's really fear, because when people get frightened, they crunch down. And they'll tend to crunch down to the left, so they're protecting their vulnerable organs. So if you see people sitting like off this to the left, it's because they're frightened. It's because they're telling their body, I'm frightened. And how often can you tell your body that you're frightened and that you're anxious and you're nervous and you're not confident before your emotions and your mind believe it? And this is a real issue. Sometimes I have to be out and I have to have my phone with me and I have to look at it. You know what I do? I hold it up here. I stand up straight and I hold it up here. I know it probably looks silly to people. Guess what? What are they going to do? Give me a hard time? I'm holding it up here. If they ever ask me why I do it, I will tell them. I'd love to tell them. That's why I'm doing a video. People have to stop this continual stooping. Right now we're in a situation in which the economy is doing pretty good. And now this is what we're in the end of March in 2024. The economy is doing pretty good. One of the reasons why the economy is actually doing pretty good is that the sun goes through a 22-year cycle. This is actually used by economic forecasters. And it goes up in energy for 11 years, plateaus, and goes down in energy for 11 years. And every time it reaches a plateau, the sun actually changes its pole, and then it goes down, and then 11 years, and then comes back up again. Well, the last time it was down at the base was like end of January 2020. Just about the time when there was all the stuff at the Capitol. That was the spot. The energy was as low as it could, and the economy was really just, flatlined at that point. And then after that, the sun has been gradually coming up. And the economy keeps coming up. And people, the economic forecasters keep saying, oh, well, we're going to have a recession. Oh, we're going to have this come up. We're going to have this come up. And then what happens is it hasn't happened. Well, the reason is because the sun energy keeps getting higher. In terms of the body, the sun is like the heart. And in fact, in astrology, medical astrology say the sun is the heart. The body, no organ in the body can run at a higher level than the heart. If the heart energy goes down, everything comes down with it, because the heart's providing the blood flow. Everything will come up, or everything will go up or down with the heart. And it's the same thing with the sun. When the sun energy is coming up, you'll notice it. You notice everything else comes up with it. Now, we're coming into a period of time a little later in 24, where Jupiter and Saturn are going to be square to each other. And this is another thing that's been, the position of Jupiter and Saturn has been used for forecasting for a very long time, for finances, for economics and such. And so later in this year, when Jupiter and Saturn are in signs square to each other, we may have some challenges in the economy But once again, the sun energy is still coming up. And it may be a difference between perception and reality that we're actually seeing. Sometimes things happen because people believe stuff that isn't necessarily true. That happens. So we may see that, but overall the energy keeps coming up, right? And it's the same kind of thing. If you keep telling your body by a physical motion that this is how it's supposed to react, it will affect you emotionally. That was kind of a long way around to that, sorry. So for instance, when you're working, if you're working in a situation where you're hunched over all the time, it really lowers your expectations. It lowers your sense of worth. So you have to be really conscious of this, really work on not stooping over so much. And when you see kids doing it, tell them, don't stoop over. This is affecting your sense of self-worth, your sense of optimism. Kids are supposed to be optimistic. Little children have always been very optimistic. In fact, it's funny. You can probably spot that the younger children, before they get cell phones, are very optimistic. Why? They're little. So all the adults and all the bigger kids, they have to look up to. So they spend their whole time looking up like this. But then they get to a certain age and they decide the child should have their own cell phone, and they go from looking up to looking down. And there goes all their optimism. And then they're comparing themselves to their friends and everything else. But so much of it is the kinesiological response, the motion response of their body. Okay. Now, the other thing that's happening, and this is one that relates a lot to the anxiety issues, is because children, and because teens especially, teens and young people, are exposed to so many electromagnetic fields. Okay, all this electromagnetic pollution, from computers, from the cell phones, the microwaves from the cell phones, they have them up along the head. 30, 40 years ago, before cell phones, brain cancers were very unusual. They happened. Brain tumors they happened, but they were very unusual. Now we have institutes dedicated to brain tumors. Why? Because people are holding little microwaves up against their head. Why, if you're smart, either use a headset. If I have to do it, I use a wired headset. I like the hard wire, or I simply go on speakerphone, which is much, much better. You can keep it at a distance, okay? When the dynamics going on is that when you're around electromagnetic fields, it consumes a lot of the magnesium out of your body, okay? When your heart beats, boom, 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 right? What happens? The body is actually taking in a little bit of magnesium to get the heart to relax, and a little bit of calcium to make it tighten. A little magnesium to make it relax, a little calcium to make it tighten. And this is how it goes back and forth. If a person has a heart attack, the first thing they do is they put them on an IV, basically of magnesium. They say electrolytes, but a lot of it's magnesium, is to get everything to react, everything to relax, because you want the body to let what's happened in the heart attack. A lot of times it's clamped, and it won't relax. So the magnesium gets everything to relax because people go through it. You see, when you're around electromagnetic fields, it's making the body tighten. It makes the muscles tighten just a little bit. If you ever work with a TENS unit, they put it on there and makes the muscles tighten. Tighten. It's a way of stressing the muscles and getting it to relax. Magnesium is necessary to get it to relax. So most people are deficient in magnesium. I mean, it's just all over the place. Most people are deficient. Teens are increasingly deficient in magnesium, and that's more unusual because teens, their digestive tract is designed in such a way they can absorb stuff very, very easily. The problem is so many of the foods teens and young kids are getting these days are not rich in nutrients, so they're not getting these minerals. So if you have children who are kind of stressed, they're with electronics a lot and they seem stressed, and you can really spot it because this is called the trapezius muscle up here. It looks like a little trapeze. If that's tight, you put your hand on their shoulder and feel, and that's really like rock hard, that's a magnesium deficiency. If they keep complaining about headaches in the front of the head, this upper section of the neck, that's a magnesium deficiency. Add one a day, have them take one a day. Take 2 a day. That may be all they need, but take it every single day, and it will help relax that. Now, if they really suffer from anxiety, you can supplement that, add to that, with a very simple amino acid. You take magnesium and L-taurine. Taurine is one of the essential amino acids. It's a relaxant, a very powerful one. It's actually found in mother's milk. It's not found in cow's milk, but it's found in mother's milk. It's a relaxant. So if you have a teen who's stressed, who's on computers too much, they're very twitchy, you give them one magnesium and one L-taurine every single day. Now, it's funny, sometimes people say, oh, I wake up in the middle of the night stressed. I wake up in the middle of the night, in cold sweats. A magnesium, a magnesium and a taurine every single day, or take it in the evening or like with dinner, should get rid of that. It's just their body's running out. People are stressed. People have responsibilities. The L-taurine really helps them relax. The other thing that happens, which is very funny, is your night vision gets better. Because L-taurine is a component of the eyes, and you'll find that your night vision really improves, which is kind of a little benefit that you get out of that. So we've talked about, don't look down to the phone all the time. Improve that posture. Stop doing that. Besides, don't spend so much time on the phone looking, social media, because people are distracting themselves too much. They're just wasting time. Deal with that. Really be very conscious of where you're positioning yourself. It's funny, people who are, just a little aside there, people who are used to being really stressed will come into a room and sit in the most stressful spot. I've seen this so many times. People who are really kind of used to being kind of dominated or having bosses who are after them, they'll come in and they'll choose the chair that has its back to the door. They'll choose it. There's all these other chairs where they could see the door and be more comfortable. They'll choose the chair where they're going to be stressed. Be conscious of your decisions. You're always more relaxed if you can see the door when you're sitting down. Your body will relax. You'll turn off your fight or flight reflex. Where if you have your back to the door, your fight or flight reflex will stay on. Unless, of course, you have a mirror right in front of you where you can see over your shoulder, because the body's designed to do that. So just, take that into consideration. Now, something I've seen happen a lot, and people have asked us about this. People with teens have asked us about this in the supermarket and other places. They have teens who are just they're moody and they're emotional and they're just, and it drives the parents a little crazy. They're a little fearful and things like that. And I'll say to them, well, what do they have for breakfast before they go out? So they get up and they have, a sugar pop, some type of, sugar cereal. They say, well, yeah, this is what's happening. They're spiking their blood sugar level, and when it drops, it turns on their fight or flight. It says, well, do they have any protein? Oh, no, they don't have any protein. They get up and they have a pastry. It's not food. Not for a teen. Teens burn up energy. I mean, really. No, we just tell them, very simple. Have them get up in the morning and have, a couple of eggs. So, really? Just have a couple of eggs. They can have whatever they want with it. They can have bacon, whatever. How about a couple of eggs? If they're in a hurry, have them eat a couple of hard-boiled eggs. Make a little egg salad. Eggs are about 40% fat and about the same amount of protein, right? The fat's a great fuel. And the protein is packed full of amino acids. Now, the way this works is that when it hits your digestive tract, okay, it's going to take the protein and break it down into amino acids. And the reason the body does that is that's an egg protein. That's a chicken protein. And you're not a chicken, right? You're not a chicken. You have a different design. But you like those amino acids. Your body likes those amino acids. So it breaks it down, boom, with the hydrochloric acid and other ways, the digestive tract, into amino acids. And then it's going to reassemble those amino acids into your proteins or your child's proteins, into their design, human proteins. Well, the thing about it is that it's going to use the amino acids in lots of different ways. And one of the ways the amino acids are used is they're used for the brain neurotransmitters. Okay, and the brain neurotransmitters are these little guys who, in the brain, move things back and forth around the brain. They move hormones over, they move materials over, they literally move it. They're like the little, if you ever seen the big rail yard and they have the small engine there that moves cars around. It's kind of like that. It says, oh, over there's an L-taurine. Oh, we need to get it over there to that receptor. And go pull it up, grab it, and move it along. These are the brain neurotransmitters. They help transmit energy through the brain. And so without those neurotransmitters, you can have a bunch of good nutrition, but if you can't get it to the sensors in your brain that are all about feeling good, you're not going to feel good. You're going to be moody and fearful and anxious, spending 8 hours on Instagram. And I mean, because you can't kind of get motivated. And it's really just about getting enough high quality protein. It really is. It's just about, kids don't get enough high quality protein. Years ago, it was very common for children to get up and have a couple of eggs and bacon before school. And someplace along the way, they thought that this was too much cholesterol, despite not having any real research that supported that. And so everyone started moving over to more and more carbs. And now obesity is over the top because it's carbs that make people fat. It's grains that make people fat. Every farmer knows that. But what people need are these high quality proteins. And it's very important with kids, or adults, but especially with kids these days, because this is about, good health for our kids, that we get them high quality protein. And they say, well, can we use beans? Well, beans aren't really high quality protein. Something you learned, I'm going to explain something to you. You forgot it because you probably learned it in junior high, that there are 3 kingdoms, okay? There are the plant kingdom, the bushes, the broccoli, the grapes. There's the mycelium kingdom, the mushrooms, the morels, the fungus, right? The yeasts. And then there's the animal kingdom, the humans, the dogs, the cats, the cows, the goats, the fish. There are 3 different kingdoms, okay? They each evolved at a certain point independently. They each ran their own operation. They each made decisions based upon their own goal, their own, purpose. Okay, their own defensive systems and things like that. And it's actually one of the places where, when you go into the Bible, into the most ancient parts of the Bible, it's not entirely correct. The concept that all the plants and everything were put on the planet for us to use. I'll tell you something. I've been an herbalist 50 years. There's a lot of plants you don't want to use. There's a lot of toxic plants out there don't want to use. There's a bunch that will make you very sick. And even a lot of the foods that we eat commonly actually have some type of toxin in there that causes us a problem. The classic one are the lectins, of which gluten is the most famous. Lots of people eat food with gluten. There's a lot of people who can't. And because the plant did not develop in order to feed humans. The plant developed because it was a plant and it wanted to live. They all have defensive systems. Among the different plants, it's funny, among the different plants, the ones that have the least numbers of defensive systems, right, are the fruits. It's because the plant wants animals, including humans, to eat the fruit and then take that away and deposit those seeds someplace else with some fertilizer. It's a great system. What's funny though is that with certain like blueberries and such, those types of berries, the fruit is not toxic and it has some nice nutrition and it's sweet and humans like it, but the leaves are toxic. If you ever notice when you get blueberries, there's never any leaves in there. They're all those different related berries, those leaves are not good for you. They're very careful that they're not included in the package of berries. Because that's the plant. That's the part it wants to protect. Plants all have these protective items, these protective systems. So you have to be really careful about that. It's one of the reasons why when people get older or people get sick or people have an injury, sometimes the best thing you can do is you give them very fatty meats because they're very easy for them to absorb. The fat is easy to absorb. The fat is easy to use as nutrition. The meat gives them the protein they need in order to rebuild their muscles. When you eat food, animal foods, the primary way in which you use the fat is as fuel. It's the preferred fuel of the body. It can process carbohydrates, but its preferred fuel is actually animal products, whether it's eggs or it's fish or whether it's beef or sheep or whatever. But the fat is really the fuel. The protein the body uses for rebuilding muscle and rebuilding tissue. Now, it can use protein as nutrition. It can convert it. But its easiest one for it to absorb is carbohydrates. For years, they were saying, nutritionists were saying, oh, carbohydrates are the preferred food for the body. And they based this on the fact that the body burned it up first. But the reason the body burns it up first is because it can only store about 2,000 calories. That's the max it can store. And beyond that point, it becomes toxic. So it will convert into fat. It takes the carbohydrates and turns it into fat, which is non-toxic. It can't let unconverted sugar, unburned up sugar float around the system because it's toxic. When it's too high, that's what's called diabetes. It's toxic to it. The body can handle a small amount of carbohydrates, but the food it wants is fat. The food it runs best on is fat. It converts it and uses it, and especially in the heart and the brain, they depend upon that. So when you've got children who their mood is rough, their anxiety is high, you've got to get more high quality protein into them, whether it's hamburgers or it's eggs or, and many times it's the cheaper cuts of beef, the cheaper cuts of meat that have the higher levels of fat that are the healthiest for them. They're the easiest to eat, and they're the healthiest for them, rather than the very, very lean meats. People have this phobia about fat. That came up about 50 years ago. We called it the Twiggy complex. It was based upon basically no research. It's never been proven that this was actually a detriment. It was something that people came up with and said, this sounds like a good idea, and they ran with it, and 50 years later, obesity is through the roof. So if you don't want your kids to be too big and you want them to be happy, get them high quality animal foods, and don't let them stoop over their phone. Tell them that. Explain what they're doing to their bodies, because kids are smart and they want to be happy. So I'm Dr. Ralph Demetrius. I'm a naturopath and herbalist. This is Good Health for Your Children, and this is part of our Ask Ralph and Lonnie series that we've been doing for, 14 years now, I think, something like that. I do this with Lonnie Diamicus, Dr. Lonnie Diamicus, my wife. And I hope you find this is interesting. You can find us at spaceandtime.com. And until next time, I hope you find ways to be healthy and find ways to help your children and your family to be healthy too. Be well.